Well, hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Namulan Bayar-Sehan, and I am the Education Director at the Aldridge Contemporary Art Museum. The Aldridge is a non-collecting institution, and we're located in Ridgefield, Connecticut. We present new exhibitions by emerging artists, established artists, and thematic group exhibitions all throughout the year. Please come and visit us if you haven't joined us in a while. We have a lot of exciting new exhibitions coming up this year. For today's talk, thank you so much for joining us. We are diving into the concept of deep time, the vast and temporal scales that shape our planet and humanity's place within it. This talk is presented in conjunction with our current exhibition, Martha Diamond Deep Time, co-organized by the Aldridge Museum's Chief Curator Amy Smith-Stewart and Levi Prombaum, the former Katz Curator at the Colby College Museum of Art. I'm really delighted to introduce our speaker this evening, Cristina Parreño Alonso. She is an architect, designer, and senior lecturer at the School of Architecture and Planning at MIT. Her innovative architectural practice and research invites us to consider time beyond human perception and incorporates a geological lens into the cultural and historical dimensions. She founded the Deep Time Project at MIT to challenge traditional notions of temporality in design. And she's also the director of the Cristina Parreño architecture firm based in Cambridge, Massachusetts and Madrid, Spain, and has won numerous awards, including the European Award for 40 Under 40 and the Emerging Firms Award at the Design Biennial Boston. Her work has been published widely, and she has exhibited in numerous presentations, including at Art OMI in New York, the Shushev State Museum of Architecture in Moscow, and the Venice Biennale in 2021, and coming up in 2025 this year. I'm really delighted to welcome Cristina, and thank you again so much for joining us and offering this presentation today. I'll hand it over to you.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Namulan, for the introduction. And thank you all for being here tonight. I also want to thank the Aldridge Contemporary Art Museum for the invitation to speak. I'm very, very excited to give this talk with the occasion of Martha Diamond's exhibition titled Deep Time. And I'm excited, of course, for the relation of Marta's work with the perception of time and the built environment, but also because I'm absolutely fascinated with the concept of deep time. So in my own work, I advocate for the need to expand architecture timescales of perception as a way to connect with the very planet where we build. And so out of that interest, Namulan was mentioning, I started the Deep Time Project at MIT, an initiative that aims to explore ways in which architects can be more sensitive to the environment, to other cultures, to each other, by incorporating deep time to our imaginary, the deep or the time of the planet. So I will be talking about time today, but to warm up, I thought it would be fun to start with a quote on movement. And so the quote says, despite our tendency to conceive, perceive, and represent buildings as static objects, buildings are, in their abundant reality, matter and energy in flux. As Heraclitus famously remarked in his Pantarei, everything flows. Buildings are no different, and they need to be better thought through as entities in motion. But what does it mean for a building to be in motion? To see architecture not as something fixed, but as something in flux? Well, to me, seeing architecture's movement is really about seeing all the ways in which architecture is experienced through time. The work of Martha Diamond is an example of this confrontation of time in relationship with the built environment. She said that she was not that concerned with expressionism, that really what she did was trying to paint her perceptions. And in fact, in her paintings, we don't really see just the city. We see the city through Martha Diamond's eyes. Her paintings are always about how she perceives architecture, a building, New York, how she perceives the built environment, always experienced through time, never all at once, always in fragments. As she walks, as she turns a corner, as a building is framed in her vision for a brief moment before disappearing again, her cities, her multiple New Yorks feel as if they are in motion, and they remind us that architecture, like time, is fluid. And so in architectural literature, many voices have challenged the prevailing notion of the building as a static object. So really, it's not new, this idea of building as a moving project, that even once it has been built, it changes it's changed by its users, it's modified by what happens inside and outside, and it's renovated, transformed. So we have had movement in architecture. But what I have been interested and with the Deep Time project is in taking this idea of flow beyond the movement of people that inhabit architecture, beyond the internal transformations of the buildings. So in one of the first pieces that I wrote about these ideas, Deep Time Architecture, Building as Material Event, which is sort of a manifesto of the Deep Time project. The quote, in fact, at the beginning of this talk was also the beginning of this essay as well. So in this sort of manifesto, I try to radicalize the movement of buildings. I take the well-known architectural statement of there is no space without event, no architecture without movement, and I add that there is no movement without time. And more importantly, that given enough time, even a solid-like material flows. And by solid-like material here, I'm thinking, of course, of a building. And so this is, in some ways, the way I introduce the idea of deep time in architecture with a little bit of help from the prophetess Deborah, which is a story that I love, that starts in a passage in the book of Judges that says, the mountains were flowing before the Lord. So now, at first that might sound like a metaphor for divine power, but scientist Marcus Rainer saw something else in those words. He saw a fundamental truth about time and matter. Rainer was a geologist, a scientist who studied how materials flow and deform, and he realized that Deborah understood something profound, that even the mountains, these massive, immovable forms, are in fact flowing, not in a way that we, in our short lifetimes, can perceive, but over a long enough time scale, they shift, erode, flow, they fold. This is what led Rainer to define the Deborah number. It's a way or a number that describes whether something behaves as a solid or a fluid, depending on the time frame of observation. It's a simple equation. Deborah number equals time of relaxation. How long do you take to flow, divided time of observation for how long do I observe you. Indeed, observed through deep timescales, what looks like a fixed configuration of the Earth's continents is in constant motion. What we observe today is merely a snapshot of the planet moving in deep time. But if this shot had been taken 300 million years ago, it would have shown a very different image, Pangea, a continuous landmass formed by all the continents prior to their separation. And now scientists predict that another snapshot taken 300 million years from now will show Pangea Proxima. All the land masses rejoin again to form a supercontinent. So even if mountains and the Earth's tectonic plates flow, what does it mean for architecture to be seen in deep time? While movement has always been a main character in architecture, it has only been considered in the timescales of human, in the limited timescales of human perception. The conundrum is that today, for the first time in our 200,000 years of existence, humans are operating at the deep temporal scales of the Earth. We are now leading geomorphic agents. The build, broadly defined as the result of all the activities involving the process of construction and deconstruction, for which humans are collectively responsible, has acquired planetary dimensions. Just as the natural geomorphic cycle is a balance of erosion, flow of earth matter, land for building, so the build entails cyclic processes of excavation, extraction, transportation, construction, demolition, and redistribution of matter back into the earth. As a major player in the build, the power of architecture and the material processes it entails compares to that of titanic natural forces. Architecture has become a geological force whose consequences need to be viewed from the vantage point of the planet, from geological timescales of observation. Now, to see architecture in deep time is to see that architecture has become a geological event, but is also to see that architecture's agency is a complex formation that involves humans and more than humans, including, for example, the geological substrate that allows it to be. Deep time situates architecture in a world of entanglements between geological, technological, human, animal, and viral bodies co-producing the environment. Now, let's consider, for example, the bedrock of Manhattan. About 450 million years ago, a collision between the continental plates formed the supercontinent Pangaea. The impact of this deep time material event folded the bedrock, that is now Manhattan, into dips and folds, becoming a major agent in the co-production of the city's skyline. Tall buildings are only possible in the north and south of the island, where the bedrock is closer to the surface, but not in the middle of Manhattan, where a deep valley is filled with unstable glacier deposits accumulated during the Ice Age. In deep time, architecture and geology are neither social nor environmental processes as conventionally understood. They are bundles of human and extra-human connected in the web of life. So in deep time, architecture is part of the web of life. Yet viewing architecture only through the lens of deep time, as if humanity were simply a collective geological force, can obscure other important scales of influence. The financial district, for example, was made possible by geological conditions, but it operates at the much shallower timescales of capitalism, power, and uneven environmental responsibility. So it is important to understand deep time not as a singular time frame, but as an entanglement of deep and shallow temporalities where multiple scales of agency coexist and interact. So if architecture is part of the Earth's crust, then it is also an archive, written matter. So to see architecture as a planetary record, we need to learn to read the rocks. We need to become conscious of geological time. Humans have learned to read the Earth's history through its natural archives. Ice cores, for example, act as frozen time capsules, holding the record of past climates. In forests, each tree ring marks a year of growth, reflecting droughts, floods, and temperature shifts, and volcanic ash layers allow scientists to date geological events across millennia. Inside caves, stalactites, stalagmites also archives recordings of water dripping over thousands of years. And then, of course, the rocks themselves. It was the rocks that revealed to us the true age of the Earth, and this formation, this particular formation in the screen, the Siccar Point, was the breakthrough. This was the place where the belief that the Earth was only 6,000 years old was dismantled, showing instead that it was 4.4 billion years old. So in many ways, this rock exposed to us the very idea of deep time. If the Earth records time in layers of ice, sediment, and stone, then architecture too becomes an inscription of time. But how do we read architecture as a geological archive? What does it mean to see the Earth as a text where every rock and every architectural ruin is a record of time? So these are questions that I explore in Tectonics of Wisdom. This is a project that examines 9 ancient libraries, looking at them not as individual buildings, but rather as a distributed archive, a planetary network of knowledge that is physically embedded in the Earth's crust. So these libraries, scattered across different continents and geologies, are places of knowledge written in books, but also knowledge as material inscriptions of the Earth itself. They are situated within tectonic zones, volcanic landscapes, river banks, and ancient cities existing at the intersection of human history and geological time. These buildings are presented as moments of intersections of different flows of matter and energy that take place at deep and shallow timescales. Each library is defined by a deep time event, a specific moment where planetary and human histories converge. In every case, the survival or the destruction shaped by volcanic eruptions, fire, imperial collapses, and shifting landscapes. Take, for example, the Library of Papyri, buried under the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79. The volcanic ash destroyed the building, but in doing so, it preserved the papyrus scrolls, sealing them in a time capsule for near 2,000 years. The library was erased, yet its records survive hidden within a geological event. Because of that reason, Mount Vesuvius is part of the architectural representation of the site itself. Geological maps of volcanic activity become part of the library's site plan, inscribed into its architectural analysis. During the research process, I began developing a series of material prototypes to explore the material events of each of the libraries with what I call tectonic books. And so these books were exhibited in the Shushev Museum of Architecture of Moscow a few years ago, and they were made with volcanic rock, aluminum, ink, clay, salt. And at first glance, they look like static objects, but in reality, they are traces of these material events that made them. They tell these material events of the library through a short text, but mostly through the materiality by becoming, again, the traces of these events. So these are some of the material events that define these libraries. The Library of Papyri, which I already talked about, made with volcanic rock. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad, which was the world's center of culture in the 9th century. And according to the legend, when the Mongols sacked Baghdad in the 1200s, so many books were tossed into the Tigris River that its waters ran black with ink for weeks. Ashurbanipal, the last king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, collected thousands of clay tablets in Akkadian cuneiform, and his royal palace was set ablaze in the 600 BC. However, the fires, which destroyed the royal library of Ashurbanipal, incidentally baked the clay tablets, preserving them for millennia. Another example, the Heinsa Temple Library, which is home for the Tripitaka Koreana. A sophisticated preservation process required that the wood soak in sea water for 3 years, boil in salt water, and dry in wind for another 3 years. Finally, the wood blocks were carved and preserved with a poisonous lacquer. And the Mogao caves carved into the cliffside of China's Gobi Desert consist on a network of carved temples. In the year 1900, monk Yuan Lu discovered a crack in one of the cave walls, revealing a hidden chamber filled with the brim of ancient texts that had been sealed for thousands of years. Okay, so in this obsession of seeing architecture always as a material event, I've been very inspired by artist Richard Serra in his 1967 verb list. He created this list to describe actions that he took in making his art: twisting, bending, folding, breaking, cutting. And what I love about this list is that you can think about these actions in a more abstract way, as if they are both human gestures and also geological ones, forces of sculpting, forging, assembling, but also the forces of erosion, compression, sedimentation. And this is for me a way of seeing geology and technology together in the act of world making. And in this sense, the question emerges, can we design an architecture that does not resist geological forces, but works with them? So the next two projects, Carbon to Rock and Magma Matter, explore this question not as metaphors, but more as material investigations, where architecture is seen as a geological process. So if architecture is to engage with deep time, it must go beyond sustainability. It must actively participate in planetary cycles. Carbon to Rock looks at time in reverse. It asks, can buildings become part of Earth's carbon storage process? So instead of releasing carbon into the atmosphere, what if architecture captured it? What if rather than accelerating planetary warming, buildings could mineralize carbon, turning it into stone? Geology already does this. Over millions of years, atmospheric carbon is naturally locked into limestone, coral reefs, and mineral deposits beneath the Earth's surface. But today, cutting-edge technologies have radically shortened this process, offering an artificial acceleration of the carbon cycle. One of these experiments is CarbFix. It's a pilot project in Iceland, which we were in conversations to visit with the students just before the pandemic. And in 2016, CarbFix successfully calcified CO2 into basaltic rock in just 2 years, a transformation that would otherwise take millions of years in nature. So Carbon to Rock, this project explores the architectural consequences of these new artificial manipulations of geological timescales. It extends the inquiry of the Deep Time project, investigating the entanglements of human and planetary processes, challenging us to design with planetary feedback loops rather than against them. This project was part of the Venice Biennale 2021, How We Will Live Together, on view as a volcanic installation. And the installation was emerging from an igneous Dimaxion world map, a map conceived with our students to highlight the tectonic faults of the planet, the very gateways through which molten magma rises, producing Earth's basaltic crust. And then there was a video installation presenting the igneous rocks as the narrator of the planetary carbon story and asking us to give carbon to rock, give back carbon to rock. The next project, Magma Matter, explores the fluidity of matter in a very radical form with molten rock. And it asks, what does it mean to build with the materials of planetary formation itself? What does it mean to work with the liquid state of the Earth? It asks, can architecture stop resisting geological processes and could instead work with Earth's own forces? So in Magma Matter explores lava as both a building material and as a form-making agent. Instead of extracting resources from the earth, this project proposes to collaborate with these natural cycles, investigating two fundamental ideas. First, can molten basalt be poured, shaped, and solidified like concrete, offering the same structural flexibility, but with a fraction of the CO2 emissions? And this project started as a collaboration between John Eichelberger, a volcanologist, an MIT alumnus who founded the Krafla Magma Testbed in Iceland, which is the world's first dedicated magma research facility. And so the work that we are doing at MIT at a small scale in the foundry of the material science could be expanded to be tested in a site that provides directly the geothermal energy to remelt the rock. This is one of our rock casting prototypes, melting volcanic rock and pouring it into control forms at MIT. And it was the first one of a series of prototypes that are going to be on view this summer at the Venice Biennale. So there will be more images to come soon. For now, just a sneak peek of the textures of the rocks, the prototypes. They are like double between prototypes and sculptures. When the rock cools and solidifies again, it changes from the rough texture of the volcanic rock to something that looks more like obsidian, no? And various colors and shades and textures. So these are some of the textures of the part of the project that is thinking of lava as a construction material. And there is another part of the project which is using lava as a natural form-making agent. What if we let lava itself shape space? And this is the drawing below is a section of a natural lava cave, which is a point of departure of this project. The project explores whether active volcanic eruptions could be harnessed as a natural construction process. The project we were inspired by volcanic barriers used in Japan and Indonesia. And we were asking ourselves, can we rethink lava control structures as architectural formwork? Could these temporary structures guide molten rock into intentional spatial forms? It's almost like thinking lava flows as a generative architectural process. If a volcanic eruptions tend to be seen as a catastrophic force, magma matter challenges that perception and asks, what if we saw it as a design partner? And so the project is really an exploration of architecture's role within deep time, and it speculates with the possibility of shifting architecture from extraction to collaboration. If today construction is based on taking from the earth, this project asks, can we build in dialogue with geological processes instead? Again, shifting architecture from static structures to geological events. Instead of seeing buildings as fixed objects, no, we embrace the fluidity, the transformation, the deep time material event. And then also shifting architecture from waste to geological record. If we work with planetary cycles, can architecture leave behind traces that integrate into the Earth archive rather than disrupt it? And so I'm going to continue with a project that relates to magma matter and to carbon to rock, in that is interested in the intersection of architecture, sustainability, and material exploration. In the exploration of non-conventional systems of construction and non-conventional assemblies that bring about exceptional properties of certain materials that tend to be overlooked. So the projects that I have just showed do this with volcanic rock, but I have also worked with other materials like glass, for example, which shares with volcanic rock the origins in geology, the fact that it's recyclable, the fact that it exists in solid and in fluid form. And so I have worked with glass in very similar ways that I'm working currently with lava. But I have also explored other non-conventional assemblies of glass. This project, Tectonics of Transparency, is made solely with glass, where the material acts structurally. There's no substructure here. And so the idea of this project is to explore the outstanding properties of glass to resist forces in compression. So glass is 10 to 50 times higher, or the strength of glass is 10 to 50 times higher than that of the standard concrete. And then this a project, Transtectonics, which was perhaps a more playful way of experimenting with non-conventional assemblies of materials. The project was an exhibition that was first on view at Art Omi. And the exhibition was composed by a series of 4 material prototypes. They are called Rocking Full Metal Jacket, Plyglass, Wooden Bubble, and Ghost of a Stone. And each of them explored and speculated with a form of making that, again, challenge conventional perceptions of well-known material. So this prototype, for example, is a solid piece of glass that we carved with techniques that are normally used with a stone. And in fact, it was a collaboration with Precision Stone Company. It was the first time that they were carving a solid piece of glass. And really the idea was to see the material through another eye, through another lens. Each prototype also came with a video, which aimed to stage the making of each piece as a material event. And these material events imply a step, obviously, like it relates to my way of seeing architecture as process, but also a way of stepping out of the conventional systems of assembly and enabling the process of construction to be part of the process of experimentation. And finally, I want to mention the workshops that I ran at MIT on the Deep Time project, which are developed in an effort to think through new perspectives of architecture from these augmented temporal sensibilities. The workshops are strongly interdisciplinary. We invite geologists, anthropologists, historians, artists for conversations around deep time, and students develop a series of projects through videos and through material experiments and material prototypes on themes like geological palimpsest, ruin, radical maintenance, intergenerational gift, plastic. This is the exhibition of one of those workshops with the work of students on the ethics of deep time design. And I will end leaving this call for architects, although I think this is beyond architecture, it's more like a call for humans to start thinking and acting according to much larger timescales that encompass the ecological and geological resources we draw from. To build with deep time is to build with responsibilities, to understand that every material choice, every extraction, every inscription onto the earth is a decision that will outlast us. We always leave traces, and the question is, what kind of traces do we want to leave behind? With that said, a very short talk on a very deep time theme. I'm told that there's not going to be Q&A today, but I'm leaving my contact in the screen. Please do reach out. I would love to hear your thoughts on deep time, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Christina, so much. That was an incredible introduction, a deep time in your research, and I really appreciate this presentation you put together for us and your really thoughtful commentary on Martha Diamond's work at the beginning as well. It was really, really wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're not going to do a Q&A for this program, but if you have any questions, please reach out to Christina directly, or please reach out to me. You can find my contact information at thealdridge.org. And with that, I will let everyone have a great evening this Thursday. And thank you again, Christina. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everyone.